All right. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Send better emails. Special edition version 2.
Yeah, this
That's what we
is getting you the closest in physical proximity that we've ever been to each other whilst recording an episode, I think.
Yeah, so we're on the fly a little bit. We're out of our normal environment. So apologies if the sound quality is affected by that. But is
Sure,
there
my
any
mum
other
will be gutted.
yeah. I don't know if there's any other reason for that other than we just didn't organise ourselves properly this time.
Yeah, I mean, you're going away, so I think it dawned on us that if we don't get an episode out, then we'll miss a week, and that would just devastate our listeners. So,
Yeah. I mean, we joke about it just being our mums. Let me just have a look at how many people actually listen. Um, I mean, we're in terms of like the amount of listens that we've had on this for this podcast over since it started. Let's have a look. I mean, we're into hundreds, so
yeah.
you know.
And
So
we're
we've
only
had
about 90 of those.
yeah. I mean, I stopped listening to our episodes. Do you still listen to them
I do listen, yeah, because I
every
love
single
the
week?
sound of my own voice, as you can probably tell.
Okay. I don't like the sound of my voice.
I like your dulcet tones on a Thursday morning. What can I say?
What are you doing on a Thursday morning? Um, I don't like the sound of my own voice. I don't even like the look of myself in the mirror, to be fair. But I also don't like
Oh,
the sound of your voice. So it's a double whammy for me. There's no way I'm listening to the pod.
yeah, listeners, this special episode is going to be about Jamie's self-esteem.
Yeah,
How can we
self-esteem works.
improve it? How can we improve your esteem metrics?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So it's opinion that. But if you've got ideas on a postcard,
Yeah.
let me know. Anyway, less about my self-esteem. We want to talk about Secret Norwich again, which for the listeners, this will be the second week in a row. If you're someone that's listening to consecutive episodes, that we've talked about Secret Norwich. The last episode we introduced what it was, this new project that we'd launched, and how we're building this newsletter and we're building it in public. And we're going to try some weird shit. We're going to test stuff that we aren't able to test in other areas, in other environments. And we want to be fully transparent. We'll let you know what works, what doesn't. We won't be embarrassed by sharing our failings because we'll turn them into learnings and we'll just style it out. So last week we uh, announced that and some top level stuff. So Secret Norwich, James, be succinct here, but Secret Norwich, what is it?
Like you have to tell me to be succinct. I'm Mr. Succinct.
Yeah.
Secret Norwich is a newsletter that sends a hidden gem that subscribers hopefully won't have heard of that could be in or around Norwich once a week.
That might be the most succinct you've ever been. I'm so impressed. Yeah, so that's the premise of the newsletter. That's what we're doing. Local newsletters are quite popular at the moment, right? And Norwich is just one of those places that people who live in Norwich tend to love Norwich, so it's a good area to start something like this.
Yeah,
Um,
you know how there are those places that you go to sometimes and it's like they're 15 years behind. Like people are still wearing clothes that were trendy 15 years ago. England is a bit like that, or the UK is a bit like that when it comes to newsletters. So local newsletters are really popular at the moment, but everyone who's talking about them is American, and there's loads of local newsletters springing up in cities all over the States. It takes a while for this stuff to move over to the UK, so we're hopefully jumping ahead of the curve a little bit, but to UK standards.
nice. And people might listen to this and feel inspired, or will feel like this is a warning as to why you shouldn't start your own newsletter, depending on how this project goes. But where were we at when we spoke about it last week? So when we spoke last week, or when the podcast came out last week, so I get confused with the timings here because we record at a certain time and then we release at a certain time.
Yeah.
But for the listener, last week, where were we at? So we were 1 week in, and um, we were at 188 subscribers.
Yeah.
We had leveraged organic social. namely Facebook and Reddit, to get some subscribers. And we had also leveraged our personal network, friends and family, and then connections of friends and family, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think if memory serves me correctly, we hadn't quite leveraged that to its full extent yet. So we had told a couple of people about it, and I think you'd posted about it on LinkedIn at that point. But there was still we haven't exhausted those immediate circles either.
Okay, nice. Before we before we jump into how it's doing and where we're at with Secret Norwich, do you want to do you want to say any caveats or any
How
health
do you mean?
warnings? Because what I will say that there are some things here with Secret Norwich where the work that we've put in to grow this newsletter is good, but also part of the success I think of Secret Norwich is that it's a perfect storm. And what you have done when you started Secret Norwich was identified a very clear content opportunity, right? Of someone, a market that was desperate for that content. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So what Jamie is sort of alluding to here is the fact that we have had a really successful couple of weeks since we last spoke about this. So even though the episodes that you'll listen to are a week apart, there's been 2 weeks between our first report and the report that we're doing now, or nearly 2 weeks, probably 11 or 12 days. And in that time, we've grown by over 1,000 subscribers. So we're now at 1,397 subscribers, which is it's frustrating that we're not quite at 1,400 prior
Yeah,
to
you
recording.
said we would be 1400 by 1 p.m. today. It's now 23 minutes
Oh,
past three. So
yeah, I'm in the mud for that because
yeah,
yeah, it's been a little bit slower than I thought it would have been. Just based on the trajectory that we've enjoyed so far. So, so that's obviously quite a significant number. It's nothing crazy. And ultimately, the number of subscribers is one metric. I would say the metric that I'm most proud of is a 58% open rate on the last email we sent, which went to about 900 people. That is a really promising sign that the subscribers we're gaining aren't just numerous, but are high quality. And Jamie, one message that I would really drill down on is that subscriber numbers are one thing, right? And they're the thing that I went to first there, and I almost feel a little bit guilty for that. And they're the thing that a lot of newsletter creators go to first. Oh, this is how many subscribers I've got. If we have 10,000 subscribers and a 5% open rate, that's that is worse than having 1,000 subscribers with a 60% open rate. So I think I've done my maths correctly there. So the the subscriber numbers are all well and good, but unless they're high quality and unless they're opening and replying and all of that good stuff, there's no point in having them. And so, yeah, the open rate is also in a really healthy place, which is I'm more buoyant about than the subscriber numbers themselves.
nice. I think that's really important. I think because you and I, we love chasing the subscribers, right? And what you've done as well in the background is you started to evaluate the quality of subscribers based on the source, right? But before we jump into that, why don't we talk a little bit, or why don't you talk? I'm going to ask you this question a little bit about how did you get, or how did we get those subscribers? What channels have you leveraged? What have you found to have worked, and what do you find hasn't worked? And then what are your predictions for what's next?
So the main route for acquiring these subscribers has been overwhelmingly Facebook and through two different mediums. Firstly, organic, and this means predominantly posting onto local Facebook groups, of which in Norwich there's an inexplicably high number. So there's a huge one with 60,000 members. There are other sort of offshoots that have anywhere between sort of 5,000 and 30,000, some of which pertain to different areas of Norwich, some different topics, like, one will be pictures of Norwich from the past, which has 45,000 followers. So there's a wealth of choice when it comes to where we can sort of leverage our content in order to one, provide value in those groups and to offer something that anyone who's in that group will enjoy. And that's priority number one, is to ensure that we're not spamming. But secondly, to find audiences that would also find our newsletter interesting. So when we're posting on these groups, I'm not just saying, read my latest newsletter with a link. I'm giving out loads of information, hopefully loads of value. I'm adhering to the group rules. And then either in the post or in the comments of the post, I will say at the end, oh, by the way, I've also written a newsletter about this, which goes into some more depth, and here it is. One really important caveat is that when I'm doing that, Jamie, I am the newsletter that I link to is in the form of an article, but to read the article, you have to subscribe. So that's really important. One piece of functionality that Beehive gives us is the ability to put our newsletters behind an email entry wall. So yes, they're free to read, but you're only going to get a teaser, and then you're going to have to subscribe to read the rest. And that's really, really effective, because people subscribe because they want to read the article, and they tend to stick around. The other avenue on Facebook that we've taken advantage of is paid ads. This is something that's relatively new for us, and I suspect that the way that I have set up these ads is fairly layman. We are not Facebook ad specialists. We are email marketing specialists, and I'm confident there's a good reason why some agencies are built purely on the basis of being excellent Facebook paid ads people. We're not that, but we have used Facebook's AI mechanisms in order to uh, run and theoretically optimize ads, and they're doing really well. So we're currently achieving a cost per subscriber of 24p, which is really low. I would say a benchmark for most newsletters is around the £1.50 mark. Again, like I said, the US is ahead in this department, so they use dollars, and they usually target $2 per subscriber. Again, though, this is so dependent on niche, Jamie, and we've run an experiment with LinkedIn ads recently for our own, for the Inbox Club's newsletter, which hasn't been near that kind of CPA. So one advantage that we're tapping into here, Jamie, and you alluded to it at the start of the podcast, is that we're capitalizing on the fact that there does seem to be an appetite for this kind of content in Norwich. And I think that's really helped to drive down our cost per subscriber. It's also a huge boost that, unlike targeting, say, football fans, which are disparate and spread across the world, we're able to tell Facebook, focus all of your energy and attention on this 20-mile radius. Um, by doing that, it means that Facebook, as long as Facebook shows ads to adults who live in this area, which is easy data for Facebook to gather, we know that they're going to be in our target audience, because our target audience is, you live in Norwich and you're over the age of 18, and that's literally our only criteria here. So we don't have the burden of having to target niches within niches, like business owners in Norwich or football fans in Norwich, where suddenly this targeting becomes much, much harder.
Yeah, I like that. I just want to do a quick shout out as well to a chap called James Brown from JSB Digital, who is a mate of ours and has given us a kind of advice and support in the paid ad space. So he, did I say his business name? JSB Digital. He's here in Norwich. Paid ads and paid social
He's so good.
specialist. Yeah,
He's so good. He's no nonsense. And let me just stress as well that we are in the early days of Facebook ads, and it is traditionally much easier to get a good cost per subscriber when you're in those early days, because you're plucking at the low hanging fruit. As time goes on and as we ramp up our spend on these ads, it's going to become harder and harder, and our cost per subscriber will inevitably go up. It's at that moment that I think we'll really need to lean on the experts like James, because he'll come in and say, you need to try this, this, and this, tweak this, change that. And it's those iterations that really distinguish the good from the great, and he definitely is great.
cool. Perfect. Okay, so what's next for Secret Norwich?
Yeah, so we're going to continue with what's worked. We're very much of the spirit that, if it's working, don't change it. And so that means doubling down on Facebook ads for the meanwhile, until such a point where those that cost per subscriber becomes untenable. I am very mindful of the quality of subscriber we're getting from Facebook as well. So one tool that we're using is Facebook's embedded forms, which means people don't have to leave Facebook to sign up for the newsletter, which is great because it lowers the friction, but it also means that by default, the subscriber is using the email that their Facebook account is on. And as many people listening to this will be able to sympathize with, a lot of us created our Facebook accounts and have since updated our email addresses. And so I have heard through the grapevine, including from people like James Brown, that that can have an impact on engagement of these subscribers. So far so good, but it's something to keep an eye on. And as we get more and more of these, what we don't want to do is erode the quality of our list. So if it gets to the point where we're not getting the engagement we want from them, we'll have to think very carefully about that funnel and the route that they go to in order to subscribe. So that's something I want to point out. We'll
Nice.
continue to use organic channels as well. I think we're starting to get to the point, Jamie, and this is like a really exciting phase of any newsletter's growth, which is where you start to get a bit of leverage, where you start to have a bit of clout. So you go from being the sort of small time newsletter that has to kind of beg and steal for favors and subscribers and really sort of scrap for every single subscriber you can get. We start to transition into the newsletter that gets talked about, that businesses might want to collaborate with, that people might proactively approach for opportunities, and that's already starting to happen. We're having conversations with a couple of local businesses and organisations. I was approached by a charity just yesterday about some of the work that they do, and not only is that exciting from a monetization perspective, not that we're going to charge a charity to talk about them. If it's right for the newsletter, then we'll talk about them cost free. But the fact that we're getting onto the radar of businesses bodes well for when we do want to advertise through the newsletter. I think the other thing though is that, and this is something that I touched on in our first special episode about this. The exciting thing is when you start thinking about the audiences that they've already built. The audiences that they own. Some of these businesses have huge databases, have big social media followings, and so if we're able to collaborate with them and say, okay, we're not going to charge you for this, but when we publish it, here's a link we want you to use. Post this on your socials, send this in your newsletter, and suddenly we're reaching thousands of people who otherwise might not have heard of Secret Norwich, with super relevant content about a business that they already follow. So having clout and being able to enter into these negotiations with something to bring to the table. We have X number of subscribers. They might want to hear about your business. That's a really interesting proposition for a business, and all they have to do in response is share it. So this is something that maybe we couldn't do sort of under 1,000 subscribers, and I'm being very arbitrary here, but something that maybe we can start to do now with a little bit more confidence now that we're kind of entering into the 1,300 plus bracket.
Yeah. 1,300 plus seems unfair because it's 1,397. It's like, because 1,300 plus could be 1,301. But I think it's also, we're talking about monetizing, which feels like a very early stage to do that. But one thing that we need to stress here is that if you were starting a newsletter, which was maybe a national newsletter, and you had 1,300 subscribers or 1,300 plus, that might not be that interesting for people to partner with you in terms of monetizing. But because it's a local newsletter, we're talking about the percentage of the total demographic of the target audience. And so the percentage of the demographic will be much higher. If we want what a medium term goal is 20,000 subscribers, right? Yeah. So if we had 20,000 subscribers to Secret Norwich, then what percentage of Norwich's population is that, James?
That would be about 20% of like the city's population and about 10% of the city and suburbs.
Yeah. So including children.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So when we think about those figures, we're thinking, okay, well, it's obvious why a business might want to reach 20% of Norwich's population. You can see how valuable that would be, and the monetization becomes much more obvious. The routes to monetization becomes more obvious there. I want to highlight a couple of things that you spoke about in your monologue there, James, and on this podcast. One thing is the audience. Like you said that subscriber count is one thing, but the engagement also needs to be high. And if anyone wants to start a newsletter and then wants to monetize it in the future, that's got to be front and center of your mind. It's not just the number of subscribers; it's got to be the engagement of those subscribers as well. And what James was doing there, as he builds this newsletter, is he's analyzing what the engagement is like by the source in which they've joined the newsletter. So, James, or we know that people who have joined through Facebook ads, the average open rate is this. People who have joined through organic social or through Facebook, organic Facebook, we know that the average open rate is this. And so we start to understand which sources give us the best quality subscribers. And then all of a sudden we have levers to pull. We can decide, okay, well, we need to turn off this ad because it's giving us an average open rate of 30%. Instead, let's focus our efforts on organic social because it's giving us 50. Those are example numbers. As it stands, actually, all sources are giving us a pretty good average open rate, and we're happy, right?
Mhm. Yes, which may not always be the case. So it's something that we'll consistently monitor. Because you're absolutely right. Often when an advertiser you're talking to an advertiser for your newsletter, they're not just interested in the number of subscribers. They're smart enough to also ask the question, well, how many people actually open your emails? Because if you've got 100,000 subscribers and only 10% are opening, that's not nearly as well. I've already done the maths in this newsletter, so I won't do it again. But you get the idea that
Yeah.
opens is everything for the advertiser. So that's also a note. If you are thinking about buying ad space in a newsletter, I would thoroughly recommend it. I think newsletter audiences are amongst the best and most engaged and loyal and interesting to target. I would say that, but there's method behind that madness. But what I would say is to be diligent around engagement rates and to make sure that you have full transparency on opens, clicks, and um, uh, all of those ingredients. If you're doing more than one ad in a newsletter, also look at growth rate as well. How many new subscribers is the newsletter adding each month, and how will that impact the number of people you're reaching?
Nice. I think, go on.
Go on. I was going to say there's a couple of other things I just wanted to mention because one thing that you talked about, Jamie, in last episode and also early in this one was some of the stranger things that we might start doing, and that's definitely on the horizon too. I'm not sure whether we'll get around to it prior to our next update, but physical forms of advertising. I mean, you were sending me some quotes for a billboard in the local shopping centre the other day.
Yeah.
We're also talking to your wife about a potential PR opportunity. So, using local media in order to promote the newsletter. We're looking at doing leaflets. We've talked about cleaning the pavements with the Secret Norwich URL. Jamie had this awesome idea the other day, which was to have a partnership with a restaurant where there's a secret menu item that only subscribers can access by offering some sort of secret words to the waiter. Like that sort of stuff sounds fanciful in some ways, but is exactly the kind of thing that we want to try and do with this newsletter, right? These are the sorts of opportunities that are so hard to execute if it's not a local newsletter. And I don't want to be, I don't necessarily want these updates to be too like local centric because I think whatever newsletter you might be starting yourself, there are creative and fun ways that you can use your leverage to collaborate with others, and that can happen on a local level, but it can also happen in the digital realm or on an international level. So I don't want you to feel as though all the best ideas are reserved for local newsletters, but as we've said a couple of times, there are um, we thoroughly expect that some of these will fall completely flat and others won't, and we want to use these podcasts to report on their success or failures.
Nice. Is there anything so far that you would say that didn't work out as I expected, or I wish I'd done it sooner? Is there anything kind of, it's very early days, and I don't.
Mm.
What we don't want to do is use these updates as a way of just kind of bragging about how well things have gone.
Yeah.
I think that if there's room or an opportunity for us to say, okay, and if there isn't, yeah, that's fine. But I think we want to highlight that down the road, right?
Yeah. So it is really early, so we haven't really had much of a chance to try the stupid stuff. A lot of what we've done is quite by the book. One thing that I would say is that in my last newsletter, which, like I said, went to about 900 people, at the bottom of it, I said, if you're enjoying these emails, please reply because I'm assembling a squad. I wanted to assemble a group of people who would become kind of secret hunters for me in Norwich, and I would give them some merch, and in return, they would feed me with good secrets around the city that I could use for content. Um, I've had two responses to that, which is fewer than I expected. I think I I think the rapid newsletter growth and some of the promising conversations we were having with local businesses gave me a bit of hubris how with regards to the significance of the movement that we were starting. And I went into that email typing it as though I was sort of, the leader of this new and upcoming, like exciting thing, completely forgetting that, we had less than 1% of everyone in Norwich at that point subscribed. And two replies, that's certainly not bad, but I think I'd overshot my expectations. So I think that was definitely a lesson in humility there, and reminder that it's one thing to get subscribers; it's another to get super fans of the work you're doing, and that will be a very very small proportion of your subscriber base. And
Yeah,
ultimately, most people just don't care that much.
yeah, fair. We need to give people a chance to drink the Kool-Aid.
Exactly,
So
exactly,
then it would
exactly.
just more time. Maybe you shouldn't have got Secret Norwich tattooed onto your body so soon. But
Yeah.
um, so I think also, maybe that question needed to be higher up in the email, right? Because it was a longer email, that one, and putting it up the top might got more replies.
Yeah, my
Um,
theory was that if the mega fans would read to the bottom, so that was my
yeah,
logic
true,
there.
true, fair. Okay. Are there any other updates that you want to talk about on Secret Norwich?
I don't think so. Just I'm really pleased with how it's going so far, and it feels almost like this has sort of been preordained. Like we knew it would get to a certain number of subscribers by a certain time, and all of this is learning for us. So I am pleased with how it's going. I am not naive enough to think that this growth trajectory we're on will continue. There are already channels that we are exhausting, and I can already see noticeable differences in the the impact that posting it around on Facebook and Reddit is having to us to our subscriber numbers. So it's just worth bearing in mind that what we're doing here really when we're building these subscribers is we are reducing the pool of people that aren't subscribed. Every time we get someone subscribed, that's one less person who's willing to subscribe. And so there is an inverse correlation between the size of our newsletter and how easy it is to get subsequent subscribers.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, these updates aren't always going to be roses and oh look how much we've grown. There's going to be some plateaus and some times where we have to grind, and I'm looking forward to those times as well because that's when you have to get really innovative.
Nice. One more question. Where do you want to be in 2 weeks? And give me a subscriber target and give me an open rate.
I think at the trajectory we're going, we ought to be at 2,000 by in 2 weeks' time. I would say I'll be disappointed if we're anything less than that. I would like to sustain open rates at above 50%. I think 50% was the dream for me with this newsletter, and it follows that as the list increases, the open rate will drop. That's sort of just how the economics of email metrics work. So again, I'm not falling for the trap of thinking that this is what our open rates are going to be. As we get bigger, we will start to lose some of those opens. my job, and I definitely should have mentioned this already, is to ensure that more than anything, I'm prioritizing just sending really good emails, because that is ultimately what's going to make the difference, and that's what's going to create advocacy for the newsletter and going to keep people opening week after week. It's making sure that the content I'm sending is just really, really good, that people really want to open it and really want to tell their friends about it. So, yeah, 2,000 subscribers, hopefully. Hopefully, we're still above that 50% open rate. Most importantly, I am still dedicating myself to sending better emails.
There we go. I was going to say, because you said that before, and I was like, you missed an opportunity there to say better emails as opposed to really good emails. Okay, nice. Good. Okay, so that's the update. Hopefully, we'll maybe leave it 2 or 3 weeks before the next one. We don't want to just get people bored of listening to this because it might not be that interesting to you. And we want to still give you other valuable advice. But thanks for listening to this update. That was Secret Norwich. This was Send Better Emails. I'm Jamie and here's James.
Yeah, enjoy Vegas.
Yeah, I'm going to Vegas. I'm flying in 2 days.
Feeling lucky?
No, I'm not. I love gambling, but I'm not a big gambler.
You've got your tattoo now, though, so
I've got my lucky tattoo, my casino style tattoo. So I'm hoping that'll give me some luck. So we'll see. If I'm not on the next episode of Send Better Emails, you know what's happened.
Yeah, exactly. Things have
I've
gone
won the
wrong.
well, no, I've won the jackpot.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you meant like you turned into some like degenerate gambler and like
No. And I'm
just
I'm in the hole and I can't.
you can't afford to fly back or something.
Yeah. Well, I like where your mind's at, but I thought I was winning the
Yeah,
jackpot.
sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
What if you won the lottery, you wouldn't you'd suck in Send Better Emails, is that what you're saying?
No, well, to be honest, I love recording this podcast so much that I would probably still come back and record more episodes. Yeah.
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 I'd pay money to record this podcast.
Would you?
No. But
Okay. Okay. Well, if I do win the jackpot, just imagine how far-reaching the Facebook ads for Secret Norwich might
say, anything you win, we're reinvesting into Secret Norwich. But anything you lose, we have to not spend in Secret Norwich.
Yeah. I want Delia running up and down the high street here in Norwich. I want her running up and down Prince of Wales with a sandwich board saying subscribe to Secret Norwich and ringing a bell and shouting Lesby Avenue. Yeah. That's How much do we need to make that happen?
Have we not ran a Delia themed Facebook ad yet saying Lesby Avenue?
Yeah. Does she own the rights to Lesby Avenue?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good point.
Yeah, I need to check that first.
Actually, yeah, on the next update, we'll definitely talk about Facebook ad creative, because I think that's a really interesting category of discussion, and probably something that if you are thinking of running out of your own newsletter, you'll also need to think about. So we'll talk about some of the things we've learned from that as well.
Maybe we'll get JSB on as a guest, James Brown.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we don't do guests really, but we might make an exception.
Yeah, he's worth it.
Anyway, I said this update should be 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We're 33 and a half minutes in, so let's call it. Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. That was the update. Catch you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.